Hello everyone, and welcome to LingoTWOW 0B. For those who don't know what's going on, go watch LingoTWOW 0A. But in short, LingoTWOW is a game show that will be hosted on this channel, split into A episodes and B episodes. In B episodes, I'll reveal the prompt of the next episode, which in this case is ignoring practicality, create the most fun job for yourself, which the contestants respond to in 10 words or fewer in up to 2 different languages. Then in A episodes, the responses are shown anonymously for the voters to decide which responses were the best, and then the results of the round are shown in the following B parts before revealing the next prompt and starting over again. The purpose of this episode is to share a lot of technical details about LingoTWOW that people might have questions about, and also to address the pre-existing audience on this channel. This video isn't mandatory viewing for participating in this competition, but I would highly recommend watching all the way through. First of all, I'll say that for the most part, words will be defined as being separated by spaces, which works for the majority of languages, including the 5 ones that are starting the season. And while the amount of information per word varies from language to language, I don't think it's worth changing the word limit to anything besides 10. For languages without spaces, namely Chinese and Japanese, the limit will be characters instead of words, with a 20-character limit for Chinese and a 30-character limit for Japanese. Thai will have a 20-syllable limit instead of characters, and Vietnamese will likewise also have a 20-syllable limit, since a very large portion of words in it are written with spaces separating them. Korean has fairly lax and sometimes ignored spacing rules, but if you completely remove spaces, then voters will recognize that you're trying to dodge the word limit and will vote you low. Lastly, in Tokipona, particles li, e, pi, o, and la won't be part of the word count to give more room to write actual content words. And yes, if enough people express interest in them, conlangs will be made available to participate in too. Other forms of speech such as Pig Latin and Morse code will not be made available because they're not proper languages. Speaking of which, the minimum threshold for new languages being added will be 25 participants expressing interest in them, but I might make this lower. Some languages which could be considered different forms of the same language will be grouped together for voting. Indonesian and Malay will be grouped together, as will Hindi and Urdu, although all responses will be displayed in both Devanagari and the Perso-Arabic script to remove bias. Similarly, all responses for Mandarin Chinese will be displayed in both traditional and simplified. If you don't think you speak a given language well enough to respond in it, don't worry, there's probably plenty of other people responding in that language who also don't know it too well. You can cross-reference a dictionary as much as you need to, and if your response is creative enough, it'll probably still perform well. Just don't use Google Translate. That's basically cheating. Native speakers will be able to tell what's machine translated and vote your response low. You could also use LingoTWOW as an excuse to learn a lot of a certain language in a short period of time in order to respond in it. I want to reiterate that responses for each language will be voted on separately, not all in one jumbled mess. As stated previously, there will be a combined leaderboard that determines prizing and life loss, and people's rankings will be determined by their highest normalized rank across all of the languages they submitted for. To break any ties, particularly since the winners of each language section will each have an NR of 100%, the skew of their voting distribution will be used, essentially how much of a positive or negative curve they have, and if that's tied, the response with the higher standard deviation wins the tie. All contestants are free to edit their responses after submitting up until the deadline, and you could submit one response at first and leave submitting your second response for later. Do know that on the original form, you can't resubmit your Booksona after uploading the image file for the first time due to the way Google Forms works. If you want to change your Booksona, fill out the Booksona resubmission form in the description. Note that you'll be able to change your Booksona in future episodes if you desire. Confessionals can also be submitted in the main form, which are just little things to say to everyone. Now I'm going to describe some TWOW terminology and strategies to get newcomers up to speed with those already experienced with mini-TWOWs. There's a concept called sandblasting, when you come up with the same idea as someone else, causing both of your responses to do worse. This isn't that big of a deal in the early game with hundreds of other contestants, but you can avoid sandblasting by coming up with very unique ideas and not going with the very first thing that comes to mind for your response. Prize scraping refers to landing in the last spot of the prize region, while prize choking is when you miss the prize region by 1 spot. And there are also survive scraping and survive choking that refer to the border between the safe zone and the death zone instead. Some important acronyms are DMP, which means did not participate, for failing to respond for a round, and NR, which stands for normalized rank. Future prompts will likely also have technicals, which are restrictions that responses must follow that round, such as not using a certain letter or sound, making the response use alliteration or rhymes, or making the first letters of all of the words spell out a different word. Not all technicals will apply to every language, and using self-imposed technicals like acronyms for rounds without required technicals can help boost your score, but this strategy is frowned on by some people, especially when it sacrifices comprehensibility. Of utmost importance to scoring well in mini TWOWs is to use all 10 words in your responses, no higher, no lower, and the same logic applies to the equivalent character or syllable limits in other languages. Be sure to follow the prompt and not weasel your way out of it, which is called prompt dodging, and be sure to actually respond on time, which is a lot more powerful of a strategy than you might think. All of these tips and more can be found in the helpful How to TWOW document, which I'll link in the description. It also gives detail on voting, which will be very important for the next episode. Real quick note, there was a test season called LingoTWOW Season 0, which didn't have the language gimmick, but this is Season 1 and will be referred to as just LingoTWOW for simplicity. Lastly, I want to address the pre-existing Pokemon Plush audience of this channel. And for the uninformed, yes, I used to make Pokemon Plush videos, and did so for years. I'm not going to be making too many plush videos anymore. It's something that I look back on fondly, but I don't want to keep making them purely out of obligation, and I want to turn this channel into a hub for all of my passions that aren't necessarily related to linguistics, like gaming and TWOWs. That's about all I have to say. The sign up form for LingoTWOW is in the description of this video if you're interested in participating. If you have any more questions, then be sure to join the LingoTWOW Discord server and ask me or other people. And if you want to participate in other mini TWOWs for practice, then join TWOW Central. And I'll see y'all in LingoTWOW 1A.